Okay, so yeah, this is a really good discussion to have. This is the point. This is really the point, you know. You won't find a piece in that box from IKEA. They haven't made a mistake. They didn't leave something behind. And you prove it. You prove it. You see, you prove, I mean, this is the main one about the eye. So if you just try to imagine that analogy of the eye, packaging all the bits and pieces of Robina, you know, in the box. It's a good one. And you're looking for all the bits to make, to build a Robina, to build a person. To build a person. It's a good example. You'll get all the pieces there, every single, and there must be thousands. I mean, forget about just a table. I mean, look at the pieces that make up a person. If you think of the person made up of the body and the mind, which are the components of a person, forget the non-associated compound phenomena component of the person, forget those, just the body and the mind. There'll be thousands, literally thousands of pieces, moments of mind, thoughts, the sensory consciousness, all your conceptual consciousness. There are thousands of different thoughts in there, thousands. And each of them, like, you know, the pieces of Robina, they're all in the box. Then there are all the pieces of the body, the ligaments, the muscles, the knee, the bones, the eyes, the eyelashes, the skin. Think of the pieces. Think of the bits and pieces that make up Robina. Think of them, think of them, think of them. Millions of pieces of the mind, millions of pieces of the body. There are. If you had to replicate a person, and you got them from IKEA. But you'd look for, we think, because we believe there is an I in here, which is the boss. And we say the words, I walk up the road. I am angry. I am not ugly. I did this. This is the point. We say the word I, but and this is the point that Lama Zopa is saying. We say the word I, but we embellish it. We decorate on top of the I qualities that just aren't there. And the delusions do that. That's their job. They misconceive. They exaggerate. They exaggerate. That's their job. That's their job. They exaggerate. They embellish. They add extra bells and whistles. Like you get a box of bits and pieces of Robina and you've got 4 legs instead of 2. No, extraneous. You don't need 4. You need 2. You've got 2 noses and 5 eyes. You don't need those. Unnecessary. Bells and whistles. Additions. We think you'll find a piece called an I. We believe it. So when we say the word I, we don't realize it, but we are putting this massive, massive meaning onto that word and believe with absolute certainty that if we search in that box, or when you put them all together, search in here, there'll be a piece called I that isn't the ear and isn't the nose and isn't the cheek and isn't the chin and isn't the anger and isn't the love, isn't all the other bits. The detail, dependent arising, is detail. And that's why it's a most powerful logic. For Buddha, as Lama Yeshe puts it, dependent arising is the king of logics to prove emptiness. So you have to analyze the details. You have to look in the details. And in the details, what you're looking for is an I, an intrinsic I, an I that's independent of the other bits and separate. That's why doing the argument about, that's another discussion, we discussed that one, another logical argument we need to use. Because one of the mistakes we make is that we think the whole of me is the I. We have to have one analysis of that one. The other mistake we make is that we think the I is separate, which is the one we're discussing here. We're looking for the extra piece in there. Where's the I? Hey, there's no I in there. There's only a hand and a nose and a piece of anger and a piece of love. Where's the I? Well, honey, the I is nothing other than the name you give to those bits, but you won't find it. And so when we say the word I, our mistake is we think there's a piece in there we're referring to, like as if you cut it out and there it is, a piece in the box from IKEA. There's a piece there called I. No, let's prove it. Okay, as we've been discussing, there's different levels of dependent arising, different levels at which things exist in dependence upon other factors. So the really simple example I always use is an obvious example of something that is both separate and independent would be the very simple example. I have a mug, you know, I have a thermos. Just keep it simple, one thing. I have a thermos. That's 2 nouns, isn't it? Thermos, I, or pronoun and I. So there's 2 phenomena I just mentioned. 2 phenomena we've just mentioned. 2 phenomena. One is called I and one is called thermos. So naturally and logically, this is the argument they call it, is if there's something existing, it's either one thing or more than one thing. So I just mentioned 2 things. It's very simple. We can prove it easily here. So if I say I have a thermos, when you look with your eyes over to where the sound is coming from, and I make that statement, you will immediately verify it. We do that when we talk to each other. If I say to you, I have an elephant, you won't just keep smiling at me like I'm a normal person. You'll feel sorry for me, because it's clear when you look, there's no such thing as an elephant here. But if I say I have a thermos, there's two nouns there, two phenomena, and you can point them out. This is a very simple example. This is a very simple example. So they're both independent of each other, and the crucial point here is they're independent in terms of their function. So an I to exist, a Robina to exist, does not need a thermos. And for a thermos to exist, it does not need a Robina. So in that sense, we can easily prove in this example that this is an example of both their being independent of each other in terms of their function, but also separate. Very simple. The thermos can drop dead, Robina's fine. Robina drops dead, thermos keeps functioning. No problem. It's a simple example. Now let's do one that's more nuanced, and this is getting to the point. We did this last week, I think, or the week before, or every week, I forget. I have a nose. So without analysis, it's really clear. I have a nose. Look at it. Just look on the frame. You can see it. There's a nose. There it is. Look. Without analysis, no problem. But let's do the same analysis as before, because if that's a true statement, we have to point out two things. We have to point out two things. We have to point out two things, and we know we can't. So you couldn't point out a nose. But now that's one phenomenon. There's a nose. And now we have to find the other phenomenon called the eye. And we know straight away you can't separate them. You know that. So this case is more subtle. You can't, the other ones, Robina and the iPad, the eye and the thermos are separate. Easy, you can separate them. And they're not dependent in any way. Here, it's too tricky. You can say there's a nose. If I have an ear as well, let's say, the three phenomena. I have a nose and an ear. You can separate the ear and the nose, no problem. An ear is not the nose and a nose is not the ear, and they don't depend upon each other. So they are both separate and independent of each other. Look at them. Easy. Cut the ear off. My nose is fine. Cut the nose off. My ear's fine. They're separate and independent. But what happens? What's the eye? Well, so I does exist, but not separately. And it's dependent upon the nose. It's not separate. It's different. You see, a nose is not an eye. This is a noun. So we have a noun called eye, and we have a noun called nose. That's why we have to define things first. What is a nose? It's that part of the body. It's got two nostrils, and you can breathe through it. That's a good enough definition for a nose. Now, what's an eye? That's not the definition of an eye, is it? What's eye? Eye is a person, whatever the definition is. It's a funny old definition that creates karma or something. I forget that. Let's say, in this case, Robina is an Australian nun. That'll do for the sort of to know what the eye is. So Australian nun is not the same as a nostril that breathes air, is it? So they're separate phenomena. They're different phenomena. They're different. They're different. They're different. They're different. Robina is not a nose. They've got different functions. A nose is not Robina. They're different, but they're independent. They're interdependent. They're not independent. A thermos and a Robina are independent. They have no relationship to each other. But Robina and a nose have a very intimate relationship. And you can't find a Robina, in this case, without a nose. It's the same here. Look, my thermos has a base. My thermos has a base. It's a fact. Look at it. So what's a base? It's the part of a thermos that prevents the water from falling out. And what's a thermos? It's a container with a base that holds your tea. So a thermos is not a base, and a base is not a thermos. But they're different. Therefore, they're different, but they're independent. They're interdependent. You can't separate them. So it's a more subtle level of dependence. You can't separate them. They're different, but they're not. You can't separate them. Because if I take the base away, I can take the base away, can't I? The moment I take the base away, what have you got now? Is a round piece of metal. And what have you got here? A tube. It's not a thermos. This is not a base and that's not a thermos. Put them together, you have a base of a thermos and a thermos. So this is the analysis we have to do. This is the precision and clarity we need. It sounds kind of intellectual to us, so kind of boring, But this is the job we have to do. Why? Because we believe in the depths of our being for eons there is an independent I in there. So we have to start, you see, we have to start at the level of conceptuality. People often say, oh, I'm not intellectual. I don't want to do all this thinking. I want to practice, please. I want to meditate. Well, there are methods. Mahamudra, go there, baby. No intellectualizing. It's a powerful experience to get the taste. It's fantastic. We've got to do all these things. But the point of conceptuality is, as all our lamas tell us when we study, you have to start somewhere. You can't just go. You can't just look at a chocolate cake, never having read a recipe, and then intuit the components of a chocolate cake. I'm sorry, you'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars if all the recipes were lost. You'd not, just by looking at a chocolate cake, it's extremely sophisticated and highly intelligent, isn't it? For you to look at it and simply know what's in it. You wouldn't know how to do that. What do? You start with a theory. You start with your mum telling you. 3 this, 2 that, 5 this, 4 this. That's the components. That's the details. That's what's in your recipe. The pieces, the individual, the details, and they're precise. Each has their function. And you put them all together and you get magically a cake. But you won't find a cakeness. You won't find an intrinsic cake there. It's the secret's in the details. Everything is details. Everything that exists, Buddha says, everything that exists in dependence upon its bits and pieces. And it's not just some intellectual boring idea, it's profound, the implication of it, Everything exists in dependence upon its bits and pieces. And that a thing is made up of its bits and pieces, but there's no extra thing that's the thing itself. It's just a name. In that, you put all the bits and pieces of a person, you put all the bits and pieces in the, IKEA sends a box of bits of Robina, you've got to construct your own Robina, and you get all the bits and pieces. You don't need a piece called I, because when you got all the bits together, guess what? There's Robina. But you can't separate her from the parts, and you can't pinpoint a Robina, you can't separate a Robina, and there's no independent Robina. This is logic. This is not even the subtlest meaning yet, but this is very powerful logic. And we have to squeeze our brains. So that the function of the intellectual, because that's the level we live at, is a stepping stone. And it leads you to the experience. Learning the recipe leads you to the experience of the cake. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Go back a page in my notes. You mentioned non-associating phenomena of a person. Can you go into a little bit more detail as to what that is?
Okay, yeah. If we look into either the 5 aggregates, which are the components of a person according to the Buddha, or I look into just the divisions of impermanent phenomena. A person's an impermanent phenomenon, as an example. So there are 3 categories of impermanent phenomena in the universe. There's mind, there are states of mind, which is mind. Then there's matter, which is made of the 4 elements. That's all the matter, all the stuff that's impermanent, that isn't mind. Then there's a 3rd lot called non-associated. Okay, there are 8 synonyms, I think, for impermanent. And one of them is compounded phenomenon, made up of things, So there's a 3rd category of impermanent phenomena called non-associated compounded phenomena. And that means everything that is also impermanent that isn't mind and isn't body. So, for example, time. Time exists, doesn't it? But it's not physical. It's not time, it's not matter, and it's not mind. So there's a whole grab bag of leftover bits and pieces of things that are impermanent, but are neither body nor mind. So in the 5 aggregates, it's similar. It's a slightly different analysis than the 5 aggregates, Buddha's teaching. Buddha divides us up into these 5 components. The first one is called form, which is referring to the physical matter. And that for the Buddha is the 4 elements, which are the objects of the 4 elements, which are the objects of our sensory consciousness. Okay? Or all the objects of the sensory consciousness, or form. And they're made up of the 4 elements. All right? That's form. Then there's next to feeling and discrimination, happen to be in the package of the states of mind that we learn when we learn the text called Lorig, which is mind and awareness or something, and it's a presentation of 51 different states of mind or mental factors. They refer to them in Buddhism, so Buddhist psychology. So there's thousands of parts of our mind, but for whatever reason, this 51 has been cobbled together, and it's got a very particular reason that there are 51. And so 2 of those are called intention and discrimination. There's 2 examples. And these are 2 of what is one package of those 51 is called the 5 always present states of mind. So there's not a millisecond of your mind where you don't have intention or discrimination. So intention is just I will, is volition. I will. It's every second. There's always going to be an I will do something. We're not aware of 99% of those intentions because we're programmed from habit. So the other one is discrimination, which is the simple capacity to help us distinguish between this and that. Do you understand? Every millisecond it's working. And because of their powerful role in relation to the way attachment functions, the way and happiness and suffering, I think Buddha extracted these 2 and gave them this special status as 2 of the 5 aggregates. The third one is like this grab bag of leftover bits and pieces. All the other non-associated compounded phenomena, plus also, though, all the other states of mind. So there's a bunch of different things in there, but non-associated compounded phenomena that are not associated, they're not mind and they're not body, but they still do exist and they're impermanent. And the 5th of the 5 aggregates is simply called consciousness, which is in general, one's capacity, is one's cognition in general. Do you understand now a bit? Okay, good. Anyone else? Questions? So, okay, well, let's keep looking at this depending on the whole thing of even the parts. I mean, the subtlest one is the mind, is everything exists in dependence upon the mind calling it that. And in a way, that seems almost like an easier argument, it's kind of interesting. But this one, that's the final one that we get to. Once we've established, that there's no I apart from the causes, and once we've established there's no I apart from the parts, we conclude that the only I that does exist is the merely labeled I. And so that analysis, again, is the subtlest one. That's the only level Lama Zopa ever talks about, merely labeled. And it's fairly easy to prove in a way. I mean, even though it's the subtlest one, certainly when it comes to the self, but it seems like in terms of ordinary things, it's fairly evident to us intellectually that, that you won't find in anything, you won't find here in this thermos a single tiny atom of anything that hasn't been labeled by the mind. So I always think of a prison. I like the idea of a prison. Like if you never heard of a prison, ever in your life heard of such a concept, and look how heavy the concept is, and that's how we can see everything is conceptual. You know very well the word prison. When you hear, there's a free room in a prison, you won't say, oh, I'll get that, I like living in a free room. But if you didn't know what a prison was, you'd be so excited. You knock on the door, oh, can I see the free room, please? What's it like? And you don't realise you're going to be locked in and have ugly people all around you shouting and yelling. You won't be so happy then. You'll ask for a better room, please. But you don't realise what it is. So what a prison is so obvious. It's so evident that it's something you make up in the mind. The mind has constructed a prison. It's kind of brazenly clear. So someone has created the idea of you build a building and you put barbed wire on it and you lock people in. It's kind of fairly evident it's made by the mind. There's nothing intrinsic in a door where they've got a keyhole. There's nothing intrinsic in that small, ugly room. There's nothing intrinsic in that bare, ugly yard, let's say. Or I might define a prison as an ugly place where you're sent when you're naughty and you can't escape from it. That's a good definition. But there's nothing intrinsic in a door. There's nothing intrinsic in a big fat door with a big fat keyhole. There's nothing intrinsic in that about that. It's clearly made up by the mind. It's clearly made up by the mind. It's obviously made up by the mind. Well, Buddha says everything in the universe is made up by the mind. But then we hear, oh, well, it can't be serious then. If it's just made up by the mind, we'll say it in our culture. Oh, well, it's only in the mind, we will say. And that what we mean when we say that is it doesn't exist. That's our view. Oh, it's only in the mind. Or what are all these sicknesses people say are just made up by your mind when you call what do you call a hypochondriac or something? It's made by, but I mean, that's the point Buddha's making. Everything is made by the mind. But the Buddha's point is, it doesn't diminish it. That's how it exists. And this is what's so hard to hear. There's nothing. This is the whole discussion that all the different Buddhas you have, from the grossest level of the Buddha's views, the Hinayana ones, all the way to the Prasangika Madhyamika. There's probably 27, 30 different schools of thought that very few exist anymore as real living groups of people. Apparently, the Theravadan tradition is that the only remaining one of the 18 sub-schools of the Sautrantika or the Vaibhashika. I don't know which one it is. Something like that. There's so many, all very easily well-defined, different schools of thought in their different analyses of things, which is marvelous. That's what you study when you study Buddhist tenets, So that all of them have got a view about what the I is, starting with saying there is something, and all of them, all the way up to the Prasangika Madhyamika, all the way up, they all say there is something that has to be there existing that is the basis of the label I. All the way to the highest level of the Madhyamikas before they get to the Prasangika. And it's only the Prasangika Madhyamikas that say there is, like Lama Zopa says, that there's not one atom of anything here that makes it that. So, of course, we've got to know the meaning of these words, because in one sense that's absurd, because I'm holding a thermos in my hand. So it's not just being cosmic, it's not being clever. We have to know the definitions of each of these words in that sentence. Because what we're looking for is something, the point is we're looking for something independent of, in this case, the thought, the mind. It's clear. And it's clear, in this recent book of Rinpoche's that I put together, all his letters to prisoners, we put it together as a book, And a long, long letter. One guy got like a 45-page letter. So amazing, so incredible. And teachings on attachment, incredible teachings on emptiness, amazing. And in there he uses one of his typical examples that anyone can use, He said the letter A. Just think, when you first went to school and your teacher wrote this shape. She wrote these 3 lines on the blackboard or whiteboard, depending on how old you are. And we know it's like this shape, isn't it? 3 lines. I discussed this last week. Just in front of me here, I've got this lovely mantra. I think it's on Mani Padme Hung. And all these years I told this last week, I think my obstacles to seeing Tibetan are so, my mind is so stuck, I've been seeing this kind of letters for 45 years. And I still look at it, and what I see is pretty shapes. I think, if you ask, I would look at it, I've been looking for so many years, haven't I? But if you ask me to write an Om, I wouldn't know how, because I haven't memorized it. Something's blocked in my mind. It's very hilarious. So it's so clear that Om has to be known by the mind. So in other words, you've got to buy into the view. Your teacher tells you that shape on the board, that's an A. So you hear the sound A. You see that shape, and then you memorize it. We know that, the little children reading their books, They memorize it. They memorize it. So before you know it, it's automatic. You've now programmed your mind. You've bought into. That's really what we're doing. We're buying into. This is the point. We're agreeing that shape in the English language is called A. The sound is A. We buy into that. Think about it. This is the dependent arising meaning. We buy into it. We agree. We agree on that definition. We agree. I mean, you can decide, I'm going to call it, an uha. You are allowed to do that. But what good will that do you? Because no one will understand you. Because conventional reality means we all agree by convention that that's called an A. We agree that that's a thermos. I mean, imagine if we never had any agreement on definitions, and we don't when it comes to our emotions. That's why we all fight. I think that when you say, I love you, and I say, you love me, and we both think we have the same definition of that word love, we do not. And we're going to find that out when we get to the divorce court. We had completely different definitions. Now, we know if we read a recipe in a cake, we see teaspoon. We can't, if you say tablespoon, you've got to check if it's an English recipe or an American one. Because in England or Australia, we call a tablespoon, what you call a tablespoon, we call a dessert spoon. So we've got to get our definitions clear. I can't just, sue the cake recipe book. You've got to know everything's by agreement. That's what conventional existence means. There's conventional existence and there's ultimate. And the first one, dependent arising, is conventional. We agree that this is this and this is that, and that's the name and that's its function. And function is the crucial piece to understand. Everything has to function in the way you define it. What is the thermos, mummy? It's a flat-bottomed metal container. That I can see it by looking. I get those words. I can see it's flat-bottomed. I can see it's a container. I can get that. But I don't know what it is yet. I have to get the second part of the definition, which is its function. This is massively important when it comes to dependent arising and emptiness. Everything, like all those pieces in that box of pieces of Robina, every tiny one of those thousands of pieces has got a distinct function. You won't get two little fingers, like I said. You won't get, 3 knees. There'll be a big argument with the knees, who gets the job. You get precisely what's needed. You get each knee and they've each got their function. Everything has its function. And that's why you've got to start defining something before you discuss it. And that's our problem. This is what we call science, or that's what Buddha calls dependent arising. So when we've agreed that a flat-bottom metal container, then the second part tells you its function. It keeps my water hot. That's its job. If you like, that's its meaning. That's its heart meaning. A flat-bottom metal container could be anything. It could hold petrol, But here we've got to be precise, and that's its function. This is massively important. Once we've agreed, we buy into that, we agree in it, we agree. But what we do, Buddha says, what our ego grasping does without realizing, we overstate the meaning, the very ontological status of this thing. We give it more meaning than it has. We put bells and whistles onto it, and we assume it has an intrinsic meaning. We assume that it's got that meaning in itself, from its own side, having nothing to do with my mind agreeing. That's the mistake. So within 3 seconds of learning the letter A, already ego grasping is doing that. It's embellishing that shape and giving it meaning from its own side. And then the worst part is, as Lama Zopa says, and then we believe it. That's what keeps us paralyzed in samsara. So we see the shape, we learn, we buy into, it's A, and then we forget that we agreed. We forget it was a dependent arising. We forget that we bought into it. We forget it's a convention. We forget that it's an agreement, that it's A. We now see it as set in stone A. We now believe it's A in the letters themselves. Now that's why we have to start arguing. If it were an A in itself, then everybody who sees it would see A. And that means I'd know Tibetan already, and I promise you I don't. So it proves dependent arising. Everything we have every day, our experiences prove emptiness every second, but we don't join the dots, It's very interesting. Okay, so any questions about dependent arising, the bits and pieces and buying into meanings and all this business? I'm just chatting away here. I'm not being very logical with everything. But are there any questions, please? Any description about what I'm discussing? Anything at all. Don't try to be clever. You don't have to be clever.
Robina, where I get stuck, and I have been stuck for a long time, is how the we happens. How the people come together to agree on anything. Is it all just driven by karma?
What do you mean by that?
Well, we agree that there are forms going by. That's how I'm thinking of it. Okay. And we agree to call it a tree.
Okay,
Who the heck is we?
Go on then.
And it can have a different word. I mean, it could be different arbol in Spanish.
Well, it is. That's the point. So then.
But that we all agree it has this function. How do we do that? I mean, how do we?
Habit. Habit.
It's just habit. Okay.
It's just karmic habit. Everything is just habit. We just come into this life. We come into this programmed with everything we think, just programmed already from countless lives of thinking it. That's why it's so hard to hear emptiness, because we don't think it. We haven't thought it. So we agree. Yep. Well, that's why learning language is so obvious. If you learn as a little girl, it comes easy. But if you have to learn it as an adult, it's really hard. So yeah, it's all just by agreement. Everything's just. I mean, anything you do. I mean, Lynn, look at an animal. I mean, look at a fish. Look at any creature. And what we call instinct in the West is the second kind of karma, called, there's 4 ways our karma ripens. One is the type of rebirth you get. So in our case, human. And then you've got the tendencies in the mind of that person, whether that's a lion or a fish or a human, the tendencies in their mind, they're just the habits. They're all karma, just habits, right? Just habits. The third is all the experiences of that creature at the hands of others, the sharks that eat it, and do you understand? And the fourth is the environmental karma. So look at our lives. We come into this life completely programmed. Like a little monkey, I always remember reading about one kind of chimpanzee or ape or some kind of one of those creatures who's got a particular attachment to sex. Well, it's completely programmed from past lives of addiction to sexual contact. It's born in this little kind of type of body into a group of people, a group of beings who have that tendency. So it joins it joins the right group, right? You know, if you want to kill beings every day, you're going to get born as a lion, baby. It'll be most inconvenient to be born as like a worm if you've got a tendency to want to rip people's guts out for breakfast. You won't be born a worm, I promise. You'll get the life you created. You'll get a body of a lion, a powerful body with a powerful reputation and big claws and speed. So your tendency will find its little home. Well, you know, we all find our appropriate home. So this little monkey or whatever it is, from the time it's born, it comes out of its mummy's womb and it turns around and has sex with her and with his daddy and with its mummy and uncle and grandpa. They're really indiscriminate because they've got very strong attachment to sex. Well, what else is that but habit? Everything is habit. Everything we do, the way we do anything is habit. Even the shape of our body is all due to certain actions. If we really understood the science of karma, we would know exactly every action we did for a fish to have a shape of a mouth like this, our finger to be turned this way, because it's all components. It's all dependent arising. It's all the parts. Every part is not random. It's the fruit of actions. Everything comes from the mind. So it's just habit, darling.
Wow.
Everything, totally. The whole universe is that. There's nothing self-existent. See, the view of a creator is an extreme view of self-existence. Extreme, absolute view of an absolute creator, and you've got an absolute soul, and you're created by someone else. This whole dualistic view is an exact example, perfect example of self-existence. That's the philosophy that it is. And Buddha's completely arguing with that philosophy. Everything has got a cause, and everything, if it's the body of a person and a mind of a person and the karmic appearances of a person, everything is due to the karma of that person. So the way, if we think of our lives, remind us again, we think of our lives, we've got a body. The main cause of that is, in our case, past non-killing. Just generally getting a human body in general. Second, we've got mind, thousands of different tendencies. The main cause of those, the habit of thinking those before. Very simple. Whether it's playing music or killing, they make a difference. Same, just habits. 3, how you're seen and treated by others. The experiences similar to the cause. If you're seen as a lovely person, it's due to kindness. If you're seen as an ugly person, it's due to anger. If you're seen as a liar, it's due to not telling the truth. If people give you things, it's due to your generosity. If people steal things, it's due to your stealing. Everything we experience, everything that how we are seen and treated by others, every tiny action, every second, that's the fruit of an action of ours. And then 4th is the physical world that we actually live in. We don't live in the sky, you know. So the way the physical world impacts upon us. Everything. Nice weather, ugly weather, happy food, ugly food, every tiny second, every second of the way the environment impacts upon us. It's due to karma. I mean, look at COVID-19 now. There's 2 kinds of karma playing out here. One is the environmental karma for all of us. Look at the whole entire world. What do you think masks are about? It's got to the environmental karma, when it's from negative karma, the physical world harms you. Look at it now, that human beings are our environment right now, and we can't touch each other. Because it's like, there's an animal in Queensland they call cane toads that were brought in to kind of destroy something or other. There was an antidote. There's a bug that ate the things that stopped the cane growing, the sugar cane. And this cane toad is so repulsive. Any animal who eats it will die an agonizing death. Look at us now. We're all like cane toads for each other. That's environmental karma of past killing, that the very physical world we occupy, which includes other people in the world, that's our physical environment. We can't even touch each other anymore. That's the heavy karma, collective karma of the entire world, the environmental karma of past collective killing. Then the other one more close to home is if you die or get sick. That's the experience similar to the cause of past killing. That's more personal. So look at the killing karma, completely collective killing karma of the entire world, you know. Or non-killing. I mean, look at, you know, some of us, I've got a little house in Santa Fe. I have not even in the, it's just very curious, and maybe some of us are the same. I've got many people, different people around the world, in different centers around the world that I know, and I haven't yet met one person who even knows one person who's got COVID-19. So that shows we've got, so far, the karma of non-killing. Aren't we fortunate? I've got a little house, you know, quiet as a mouse, little birds outside and birds and the bees and a few ants. This is, you know, no one's harming me, attacking me. There aren't cockroaches eating me, crawling up my legs. This is due to non-killing, non-harming. So we shouldn't just take it for granted and just rest on our laurels. Oh, aren't I lucky? Every second, anything good happens. We should be blissed out and realize every second is the fruit of a virtue of our own. And one day these things run out, but we take it for granted, and then we expect it to be this way. We're so arrogant. That's taking things for granted means seeing them as self-existent. Karma is so powerful for emptiness and dependent arising, I tell you. Every second of our life, everything we experience, as Lama Zopa says, is our karmic appearance, you know. Anyway, that's just extra bit. Clear? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. You
Any
brought
other
it back
questions,
to
darling? Please.
I remember saying to you a while ago, aren't we just a bag of habits?
That's right. You're exactly right.
I think you agreed with me.
Yeah, exactly. So any questions, please? Any questions, please? Any more questions? Please, about
if you
emptiness.
have questions, please unmute yourselves and just directly ask.
And about
I
dependent
have a
arising.
question. I think somebody else, though, was before.
No, please, you go, darling. You go, Barbara.
Okay. This has to do with what you just were talking about in terms of people being affected individually then by COVID. And this is a part that I always have that I have some trouble with in terms of entire groups of people. So in this case, COVID is affecting some groups of people more than others.
It is,
people who are people of color and people who are poor.
Sick, that's exactly right.
So that means that anybody who is born as a person of color and poor has a lot of bad karma to work out. That just seems kind of not something that I can accept too easily. But
okay, do you see that forget race? Just don't worry about the labels. Forget the labels, okay? Because that gets too emotional. But forget the labels of race or gender, for example, or anything. You know, just think of, you can see in the world we've got different groups of people. Do you agree with that? We're clustered in groups. We can label ourselves as Germans, tall people, Australians, people with diabetes. We've got different lots of groups.
Categorizing ways.
So just keep it like that. So yes, if any of those groups of people, as groups, if they either an individual or group, the karma is the same. So why even are there groups? Put it this way, why is it even called a group? If we can see that some group are more susceptible, like people who've got, like, what is it called? People, they call them albinos, who've got some kind of color in their skin. And that's a group of people. Would you agree? Some of them. Would you agree that's a group, isn't it? People
right, that's one way to categorize
it's a group of people. So there's some karma some individual people created individually. They didn't do it with each other, but individually they created some similar karma in the same way that fish have got big lips. Those fish that all fit the category of big-lipped fish all created some action in the past, 57,000 lives ago, whatever, particular karmic action that created the cause to run to that kind of mummy with those kind of genes. And they come out of this life with big lips. They come out of this life with one leg. They come out into this life with black skin. They come out into this life with white skin, whatever the label is. And then we do things even as groups, like a group of people who win the lottery. They mightn't even know each other, but they've all created similar karma of generosity, and then boom, they all win the lottery. So everything that we call happiness, happy experiences, is the fruit of a past virtue, whether it's as a group or an individual. And anything that's called suffering is the fruit of a negative action, whether it's individual or a group. That's the principle. And it's not blame, it's not punishment, it's not reward. No one's doing it to us. We created the cause to be the person we are. We created the cause to have the experiences that we have. No one does it to us. But we hear it in a different way because we hear it as criticism, we hear it as negative, we hear it as punishment. It's got nothing to do with that. That's the principle of karma. That's the whole Buddha's point.
And yet certain groups of people have continued to have suffering.
Yes.
Only by virtue of their being part of that group.
Yeah. But what?
So
that's right. You get born due to past actions. You get born to that group. Last life, you might have been, a rich black person and you were very arrogant, and now you get born as a poor white person with missing teeth in the South in Kentucky.
But then why do those groups continue to have suffering throughout?
Because that's the karma still, until it runs out one day. We can see history changes. I mean, look at this country now. It's apparently more Latinos in this country than so-called Anglos. So one day Anglos are going to be the lower race. Anglos will be the poor people. They'll be, you know, I mean, look at men now. Who wants to be a white man these days? You don't want to even admit to it. Soon, I mean, still they've got the power. They're still pretty strong. The group called white men have running the universe for several centuries in every damn country on the planet. But look at its other thing. Things change. It's called karma, you know. But we give them meaning to those labels. We give them meaning to those groups. There's a high group and there's a low group. So if you've got arrogance, you're going to get born to a low group, baby. If you've got humility, you'll get born as if you're humble and kind and patient, you'll get born as a really nice white man. In this world still, but maybe not anymore because it's not so cool. So we've got to get past the labels the way we see them. Race and gender. They're just labels we have created from our past actions. It's a much more spacious way to see it.
Yes, that is true. But but then all sorts of things happen because of that. So
precisely, that's called karma, dear.
Then why is that particular... How long, why is that particular group in that position for such a long time?
Because that's the way the karma is of the people, but slowly it'll evolve. One place is just, you know, one time, one city is the most beautiful city on the planet, and you'd love to admit the fact that you got born in Rome 3,000 years ago. But then when it suddenly got collapsed and it became nothing, you'd be embarrassed to admit you got born in Rome. 1 minute, it's good to be an accountant. Next minute, every accountant is evil. I mean, it just changes space and time. And they're all, if you look at it beyond the label, beyond the race, beyond the gender, you look at it and you look at if it's called suffering, it's due to past actions. If it's called if it's called happiness, it's due to past actions. If it's you being seen as a beautiful person, it's due to past actions. So whatever the group is, it's just a convention, and these change over time. One time it might have been best to be born as a black woman in Africa 2,000 years ago in some little village. It just keeps changing. Why? No, I know the length of the karma.
I can accept that. I just wonder what makes it change for an entire large group of people who...
It's the same thing. If there are 67 people who've got a particular kind of arrogance and a particular kind of pride and a particular kind of stealing, they're going to get born into a particular kind of group. But if that karma stops, the group will stop. Or the way you're perceived will change. One day it'll be seen, it'll be good. I mean, if you're Beyonce, there's nothing wrong with being a black woman. She's the top dog these days. So to be born Beyonce, she's black and she's a woman. Best. She's got the best life of all. Wow. So it's just, I mean, the length of karma is that if people keep being born in a certain, I mean, like if it stops being bad to be called black in America, then a person who's got the karma to be born black in America due to negative karma, let's say, will be born in another country instead as a white Chinese person or something. It keeps changing according to place and time. It's like we do it all. We create the causes, we create the conditions, we create the labels. We are the boss of this universe. It's not done to us, is the real point. Whether it lasts long or short is hard to be.
I mean, it's done by other humans who decide that that's a negative group.
What?
So, yeah.
What?
I said, no, clearly we're creating that.
That's right.
It's all done by humans who decide that.
That's right. It is. Yes, we all do it.
Good.
That's why we have to change our minds, baby.
Yeah.
That's why we have to change our minds and educate people. But we've got to take responsibility, which is what is hard. Because the world does not think we get born into we all say we didn't ask to get born, and we believe it. Buddha's view is completely different. That's why it's such a profoundly different view. But you see, the point is, Barbara, the point is this, darling. You're not asking the question, why do some people live in a happy group? Why is there a group of people who don't get sick? You're only asking why the group does get sick, because we're all addicted to believing karma's about the bad things. We never ask why good things happen. You don't probably ask every single second, every day that you're not sick. You never ask, wow, how come I deserve not to be sick? This is incredible. What did I do? You never ask that. It's only when you get sick you'll ask what happened. Because we are all addicted to the blame model, the suffering one, and we feel guilt and shame and all that stuff. But every second of the day that your good things are happening, you've still got a house, you've got a mattress, you've got people, you've got loving friends, money in the bank, a job. You never ask the question, why is all these good things happening to me? But that's exactly the same question.
But I think it can lead to then thinking that somehow the people who do have it all, who are wealthy, who are of the white race and so forth.
Yep.
It's like what the Nam-myoho people started to say is like, if you've been doing it right, you get born as a rich white person. If you're not doing it right, you get born as a poor.
You've got to analyze, Barbara. You've got to analyze the meaning of that. So tell me, analyze it, please, in terms of karma. Analyze it. What's it mean? Analyze it. Get past the white part. Get past that part. But if you've got a life that's like you, forget those people. What about yourself, Barbara? Are you sick right now? Have you got COVID-19?
No.
Are people abusing you on the street?
Not usually.
Okay, good. People treat you nice generally? You got money in the bank?
Yes.
A bank, if you go into the bank and you change it, you cash a check, you don't get thrown out?
This is true.
Okay, so ask the question why. So what will be the causes logically? What will be the causes from a point of view of karma? Just look at those experiences and you can tell the actions you did to cause them. So what's wrong with that? Just think about it. Don't say it will lead to something. That's just called superstition and negative minds. It's either right or it's wrong. That's what the starting point is. We've got to decide if Buddha's got a view that's valid or not, Barbara. That's what we've got to decide. And you've got to decide whether you want to buy into that view. As to interpreting it wrongly, that's exactly what the Indians have done. That's why karma is such a entrenched wrong view among the Hindus now with respect to them, because they've used it as an arrogant thing. You're upper class. I'm the top class, and they've got the poor ones. That's the misuse of this. But a philosophy is either right or it's wrong. How we use it is another discussion.
Okay. Yeah. Do
you understand?
So, yeah.
Good, darling.
Okay.
So we have to educate ourselves, and then out of compassion, educate everybody else. And if a person comes to me who's suffering because they've been abused racially, I had that recently in Brazil. We had a big class in Brazil. A bunch of people came, and one young black woman talking about the suffering of being a black woman, and she's into Buddhism and wants to understand it. It was a very moving conversation with her, and she understood it and was very empowered by the talk of karma. So it's up to how you. And for me, if a person comes to me who's just devastated because they're, let's say, a woman and they've been raped and abused, I will not talk about karma to them, Barbara. That would be hysterically rude of me. It's kind of arrogant. It's like it's like I've got cancer and I come to you as an oncologist and you're so excited about oncology and its causes and you give me all these intellectual talks about cancer. I'm not interested. Your job is to help me, please. So when a person comes to me, depends on where they're at, I will give them love and compassion and tell them, how dare that rapist do that to you? How dare they? Go punch him in the nose, please. It depends on the person how you talk. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, good, darling. What else, people? Anything about? Well, it's all about dependent arising. We're talking karma's dependent arising. This is so important.
I have a question.
Yes, Wendy.
How are you?
Good, darling. I'm happy.
How did you come to Buddhism? Because you were very political for a while.
I was, yes.
Right?
I was a Catholic first, totally in love with God and Our Lady and the saints, and wanted to be a nun when I was a little girl. And just completely in love with God. I was also naughty. And I was very strange. At the same time, I was going to mass. Whatever. I was, on the one hand, I was 12 or 13 and I was walking up. I'd stolen my mother's high heels and lipstick and I'd bought some, whatever. And I had these earrings and I had lipstick on, this is when I was about 12, wearing up full skirt and high heels and walking up and down the house street trying to seduce the greengrocer's son, So my mother got so shocked. She sent me to live at school. It was a convent. So I lived there. But overnight, I turned into a saint. So I don't understand. I went to Mass 7 mornings a week. I used to try and suffer for God when I kneeled down and say my prayers. I wanted to be a priest. I was completely into... I learned all the Mass in Latin. But then at the same time, I'd had a boyfriend who was a sailor who'd come and take me back to boarding school on Sundays. I don't know where these two parts of me fit in. I don't know. But they did. They seemed to live side by side. So I got to 19 in 1963. And I decided I'd give up God, as Hello Boy. So I started that process and hippie and everything. And then by then, 67, I went to London. My mother sent me off to London to become a classical singer. I'd been studying with her, but then I became a hippie instead. And then just for 8 or 9, 10 years, trying to find the way to see the world, basically. That was what drove me the whole time. Hippie and then radical left and then communist and then black politics and then feminist. And then after 10 years, I realized I had no one else to blame for the suffering of the planet, So I wanted something spiritual again. And then I finally bumped into Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa when I was 31. I fell into their lap, basically, the first day. My first Buddhist teaching was from them. So I was fortunate. I didn't know I was looking for them, but conditions made it happen that I fell into their lap, and here I am 45 years later. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Do you understand? That's the essence of it.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, Venerable Robina.
Yes.
I do have a question. I have grandchildren. And,
grandchildren.
I like to, teach them using the emptiness, very lightweight
yes,
material.
Exactly.
Teach
Yeah.
them, like bits and pieces.
Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh.
So then?
Okay, so so you agree? So it's okay.
Oh,
it's
you,
okay.
oh yeah, no. Anything you can. The more you understand all this stuff, the more you can put it in simple words to help somebody understand. And I think for children, a powerful way to understand dependent arising would be because when you get upset with somebody, a kid hurts you, and you start to sort of, well, try to even. So this is also bringing in kindness and dependent arising by helping, you know, the kid who's crying, or your grandchild, or whatever it is, who's crying because Mary was mean to them. Try and even by thinking about, well, where was Mary coming from? Well, there's different ways. Well, where was Mary coming from? What are the conditions that happened to Mary that brought this whole? I mean, it's not that easy, but you've got to know the kid's mind. It depends on the kid's mind, and you have to know that what will work for their mind. You know, you'll have to know that. I mean, impermanence is a good one too, because impermanence can lead to understand emptiness. Impermanence is more gross, but it's a good stepping stone, so that things change. You know, you hold on to it now. How dare my mean sister Mary? You're holding on to it for 3 hours, but it's already changed. Mary's already someone else. Things have changed, so we can just move with the change. You can let go of the angry feelings more easily. Even impermanence is a powerful way to lead about dependent arising, you know, or to emptiness.
What about the bits and pieces, the construct of the construct of the person, construct of a flower, things
well, that's
like that?
yeah. I mean, but I don't know if that's such a. I mean, even for us, we get confused about why we're talking about this. What's the point, you know? So to try and tell a child, well, what is a flower? No, it depends on their mind. It could very well be. It could be. You have to know their mind to help them look into details more and unpack things, and that could be helpful for their own mind. When you got the feeling of anger, which feels so absolute and concrete, like the flower, break it into its parts. And before you know it, you can't find a flower. Before you know it, you can't find that anger. So that can be useful, yes. Especially when you're holding on to something, or something they're very attached to, like they broke their beautiful thing, you know, and they're really sad they've broken their beautiful thing. Well, think about how you divide it up into the little pieces, bits and a little bit of, you know, things here, and where's the thing that you miss? That's a good example. Absolutely, yes.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, that's good. Good one. Well done, Cindy. Yeah. Okay, people. What else?
I would have a question as well.
Elena, come on, darling. Talk to me.
So bear with me if I try to find my words in English, because it's still a bit complex for me. So I understand the concept of that we agree culturally on terms for objects, but we agree on the function without dependent on a language term or something. So the idea with the IKEA box that if I buy a table at IKEA, there's the part of the table in it, but not a separate table, kind of like this.
There's no essential tableness, like there's no essential I-ness. Yes.
So, but when it comes, or when you explain it with the nose and the ear, I understand that concept. But when it comes to the maybe more complex state, like the mind, for me, it's hard to get the concept around that there is no separate self. So, for example, because I look with my eyes to the screen, and I look to the plant, and I have this view just visually of the world from this one perspective. So I feel it's hard to detach this abstract concept that there is no separate I from my perception of the world. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Okay.
The first bit, yes. But then you brought in the mind. So what's your problem with the mind? What do you mean by that?
Okay, let's maybe put it this way, that I don't know where I have to kind of investigate in my mind where there is not a separate I.
Okay. Okay, I understand you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the box, which is Elena, pretend the box is Elena, and all the different bits are in the box, right? And you've got to construct Elena. So the bits in the box will be what? What will be all the thousands of bits in the box? What will they be?
Body parts and also mind parts.
Precisely, that's it. Don't go further. So what are the parts of your mind?
Sorry?
What are the parts of your mind?
maybe emotions?
Yeah, well, love. No, there's names of each moment of your mind. Each moment you have a thought, it's got a label. It could be anger, love, intelligence, the wish to eat a cake, happiness, sadness. There's thousands of bits of moments. So there's, in that box will be thousands of bits of the body that make up Elena's body, and there'll be thousands of bits of the mind that make up Elena's mind. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Well, the logic here, the argument we're discussing here is there's two mistakes we make, and the two arguments, debates we have to have with ourselves. One mistake we make is, which is the one we've been discussing, that there is a separate piece apart from the bits of the mind and apart from the bits of the body, and that separate piece is called I. It's like it's special, unique little piece that and the Buddha's saying you won't find a piece in the box, a special piece. Aha, there's the I that owns the nose and that owns the anger. That's the way we feel this owner. I have a nose. Don't you dare insult my mouth. I am not angry. That kind of sense of I that rises. One feeling is it's a separate piece, like the boss. Are you hearing me? So all you're doing is looking in that box among all the parts of the body and the parts of the mind. You're looking for, is there a separate part called an I? That's one debate and one meditation to do. So far, so good?
Yes.
The second argument is the other way we feel, which is a very common one, that when we walk around life, we just think, this is I. The body and the mind all together, there's this one big lump of I. This is I. That's really also very strong, isn't it? Do you understand?
Yeah, so totally. Like, this was my question.
Okay, good. Right, well then, now we're doing the analysis. There's two analyses. One is for the separate I. We're looking for the I that is separate from the parts. The other one is we have to look for the I that is oneness with the parts. So the logic here is the whole of me is I. So there's a feeling there that I'm one big fat partless lump. And it's called I. So you get your IKEA box and there's just a big lump with no parts. Well, straight away, first of all, Buddha says you're not going to find such a thing. Everything, even the millionth of a millisecond on our time fancy Olympic clocks now, you're still going to keep breaking down time into a further shorter piece. You'll never end. You can never get to a point where you can't break it down further. You can't. There's a whole debate in the Buddhist analysis, which is arguing with the Hindus, that there is a thing that is partless. You can't find such a thing. So then, okay, we're made of billions of parts. So we can't just be this lump of I. So, okay, we say, well, I'm made of parts. Well, then my ear is I, and my nose is I, and my leg is I. So then that means that leg and I are the same. So if the leg is an I, so let's look at that. We discussed this briefly before. What's the definition of a leg? It's part of you that helps you walk on the street. What's the definition of an I? It's the combination of legs and all the parts of the body and the mind. So I can't be the same as leg. It's not possible. There can't be the same. Because why would you say I have a leg? If a leg is equal to I, then I is equal to leg, then you go, I have an I. What would you say that for? It's plain silly. So as Lama Zopa says, in general, the label I can't be the base, which is all the bits of pieces. So this is the other type of analysis we have to do. The I is, so therefore you're going to conclude that you will not find an I, an independent I that is separate from the parts, and you will not find an I that is oneness with the parts. They're the only two options. If there is an independent I, if there is an intrinsic I, it's either oneness with or separate from. And that's the analysis we have to do. And when we've realized that, we have realized the emptiness of the independent I. Okay?
And is then that our attachment kind of is like a fog over that I can separate myself from this, because I still have like craving, I want this, or I'm sad because of this, or I'm happy because of this. There I feel I identify myself with this body and these feelings. So is it through practice and through working on the attachment that you feel less
Okay, I understand exactly, Elena. So first of all, we've got to see the relationship between attachment and the root delusion, which is ego grasping. So the name of the delusion that believes in the intrinsic I is called ego grasping, ignorance. Mm-hmm. This is the root delusion. Then it gives rise to the next main delusion, which is attachment to get what that fantasy I wants. And then when attachment doesn't get what it wants, then anger arises. They've got this very intimate relationship. So attachment and anger are like the voices of the ego grasping. So because we believe in an intrinsic I, attachment arises, and that's this hungry vampire to try and get what that supposed I wants. So that's why they're all based on the fantasy I. So attachment is an outcropping of that root delusion that believes in the intrinsic I, and it's the one, the belief in the intrinsic I, leads to all the others. So once you realize there's no intrinsic I, then there's no attachment. There's no anger, there's no delusions, there's no jealousy, there's only love and compassion and wisdom. They're all fabrications, they're all made up, and they're all the voices of the root delusion. So that's why we have to identify very precisely the different thoughts that arise in our mind, because every thought is either intention, attention, love, compassion, anger, jealousy, attachment. It's highly intricate. There's thousands of thoughts in there, and this is the real analysis we have to do when we study the Buddhist psychological model. You learn to be super precise in identifying each thought. This is super sophisticated. It's because all our mind is full of thoughts, and all of these are thoughts, but they're all jumbled together right now in a great big fat soup of emotion, and we don't pay attention to the thoughts, because all we do is pay attention to the very gross feelings of happiness, or feelings of depression, or feelings of anger. That's way too gross. We've got to be much more precise in our detail, and we've got to learn to recognize these thoughts before they become feelings. This is the crucial job, and this is the unique job of the Buddhist approach to the mind. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you very much.
I don't know. Good. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Questions? Or clarity about some things I've said? No?
Robina, I have a question again.
Yes, Wendy.
It's okay, and
yes,
nobody else is going. So sometimes I feel this way, and sometimes I feel this way. Like, I feel sometimes that religion is created for the masses in order to behave, right? It's a construct, it's a concept. How is Buddhism, like, sometimes I get stuck there, that, in order to believe in this, how is this not another social construct?
I understand. Well, first of all, I understand. But even just look at those words, that's created. It's like, in other words, a conspiracy theory, isn't it? Someone, Mr. Buddha decided he's going to kind of, I just find those thoughts so bizarre. Conspiracy theories is a view of self-existence, frankly. So the point is this, this is the whole point. Thank you. You'd never say that about Einstein, would you? About relativity or E equals mc squared. You'd never ask that, would you?
No, but because he's not asking me to be good.
What's good it's got to do with it? It's just a philosophy.
I was a very rebellious person too growing up, but I feel there's a virtue, and I actually believe in all this stuff, so don't get me wrong.
No, but believe is the wrong word, Wendy. I never use the word believe, ever. I think it's a mistake.
I do believe in the planting of the tomato, and you get the tomato, right?
You don't believe in it, you see it's true.
It's true.
So
you see it.
Okay, but if you've never heard of, good example. Someone tells you that, you've never heard of botany, and someone tells you that you put a seed in the ground, and they put the seed in the ground, and then you're going to get a tomato in 3 weeks. You won't believe them. You think it's a miracle. You think they're talking nonsense. You think they're hysterical. So what you're going to do, the first step is you check the person's not an idiot, and then you take what they say as a hypothesis, and then you go to prove it yourself. Well, it's easy to prove that one. It's kind of hard to prove emptiness. It's harder to prove reincarnation. It's harder to prove the mind is not physical. It's harder to prove that everything you think and do and say produces your future. But the principle, Wendy, is the same. It's either right or it's wrong. Buddha is not a creator. He's not a creator. He's not a creator. There's no such concept. That's conspiracy theory as far as Buddha's concerned. Every sentient. So you got to. So you, whether it's growing a tomato or believing that, or testing that 1 + 1 is 2, or that the mind is not physical, it's the same process. You check on your sources. You make a decision. You think Buddha's a valid source, or you make a decision. You think the Dalai Lama's a valid source, but not because he's a cute guy. You check up, and then you start learning to hear what he says. And in the beginning, with 1 + 1 is 2 and the gardener, you don't question them. You have to believe them, but you've checked on your source first. So you have a belief in a valid source. Then you slowly prove things one step at a time to yourself. And either Buddha's either right or is wrong. So you've got no other choice about it. The fact that it might take thousands of years or countless lifetimes isn't the issue. It's whether it's the principle of the approach that counts. So it's up to you. Believing, I never use the word believe, I refuse to, because it's intellectual laziness. It's because we like it. That doesn't prove anything. I mean, you just have to take it as your working hypothesis. That's the only way to do it. And as the Dalai Lama says, if we ask us Westerners who are used to the religion of belief, because you can't prove that God is right, that's the worst sin of pride. And that's why it's shocking to us. We assume it's like religion, that someone made it up, and that's exactly the view people have of religion. Of course they do. So then,
or reincarnation, like how can you prove something like that? You can't.
See, that's because you've got a Western view, because your mind's very narrow and stubborn, and you believe that your mind is your brain. You believe what your mother tells you. You believe your mother made you. So you believe what you've been told, which is you can't prove it. That means you haven't even bothered to read the Buddhist literature. It's all there, just telling you how. The Indians 3,000 years ago observed reincarnation, So if you even know the most simple example of single point of concentration, which asserts a subtle level of mind that the West doesn't assert, you've got to take that as your hypothesis first, Wendy. And then you look at what a single point of concentration is, you go through the process and you read how it accesses, you've got a subtle level of mind. You've got to study the models of the mind in Buddhism, which asserts subtler level of cognition. And when you've got single point of concentration, you will have clairvoyance, and then you can prove reincarnation. It take you a couple of years if you want to work hard at it. It's all there in the literature. It's all there, Wendy. It's all there. It's been around for thousands of years, before even the Buddha,
So I guess you just go on what you said. You go on the hypothesis. And
what else can you do? But that's why you do everything, Wendy.
I know, it's true.
There's nothing you've learned that you haven't done that first. Even 1 + 1 is 2. Your mother sent you to the school teacher. You didn't choose them, and just assume she made a good choice. She tells you 1 + 1 is 2. You say, thank you very much. But then she says, go home and prove it to yourself. She doesn't say to you, I want you to believe it. And here, 57 years later, you still believe that 1 + 1 is 2, and you haven't done the work. That's intellectual laziness. Well, that's the approach in Buddhism. And he's either right or he's wrong. So you've got to start somewhere. We're the boss here. And as the Dalai Lama says to us, if you do prove he's wrong at some point, then you must reject him. That's the rigor and depth of analysis and clarity and responsibility we need. But we're not used to thinking that when it comes to what we call spiritual. We just think we're allowed to believe whatever we like. I mean, we're just idiots, really ignorant idiots.
I guess it would, I hear what you're saying. It would help me to go into it deeper if I actually believed in reincarnation.
But you're going around in circles. No, excuse me, Wendy, you're missing the point.
I get it.
You've just heard Einstein tell you about E = mc². And you're going, oh, I can't begin to study it until I believe in it. Don't be absurd. That's like saying, I refuse to ride a bike until I can ride a bike perfectly. That's insanity. It won't work like that. You've got to start with your hypothesis. Check that Einstein's valid. Then you decide you're going to do the hard work. He says, here's my methodology. Over to you, honey. Prove it for yourself. You've got to do the work, Wendy. You've got to take a hypothesis first. A scientist, any decent scientist, will hypothesize something and then attempt to prove it. And they might be wrong. So you take Buddha's assertions, if you want to, you base it on the Dalai Lama, somebody you think is valid, and then you take the assertion and you start from the beginning of 1 + 1 is 2, and you go to the next level, and you tick the boxes as you go. And when you finally get to the point and you can prove it's wrong, then of course, thank you, Buddha, I've learned a lot, but I now know you're wrong about that one, so now you move on. You don't have a choice, Wendy. There's no choice on the universe but that approach.
I hear you.
Good.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Okay, time to go. Look at it. 3 o'clock or something, 2 o'clock. Anyway, no more questions? Any more questions?
Oh, sorry.
Let's just read. There is Stephanie, go on. One question. Go, darling.
Yeah. I just got lost at a point for a short moment, and I thought maybe you could clarify.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the box and the different pieces, and then you quoted His Holiness, and you said the I isn't empty of intrinsic existence because you can't find it. And then you made the point it's empty of intrinsic existence because, and this is where I got lost a little bit.
Because it's dependent arising. So let me I'll explain that briefly in this way. The subtlest level of dependent arising, which is finally the one we have to realize in order to realize emptiness, and this is the level that Lama Zopa only ever talks at, is that first we look at the one of causes, that there's no I apart from the causes, there's no I apart from the parts, and then finally we will not find any I apart from the mind that labels it I. So in other words, Stephanie is a label, is merely the name. Stephanie is no more than the name that we give to the parts. So Stephanie is not separate from the parts. You won't find a special little piece labeled Stephanie in there. That's the unique little Stephanie that is the mini me in there that makes it all coherent. And you won't, and there's no Stephanie that is oneness with the parts, because Stephanie is nothing other than the label we put upon those parts. So when you've realized in your meditation, your subtle meditation, after all the much analysis and much thinking and practicing, and then you, in your meditation, your subtle meditation, you finally recognize crystal clear and see nakedly that the absence of the intrinsic Stephanie, that you've always, so you realize that there never has been, isn't, and never could be that Stephanie, that is completely not there. So then once you realize that emptiness, you won't find the Stephanie, you'll know there's no intrinsic Stephanie, but then you will realize the dependent arising Stephanie, that she's merely labeled. So you'll realize merely labeled Stephanie once you've realized emptiness. So there isn't you won't find a separate Stephanie in the box. But there is a Stephanie, but merely labeled Stephanie. And you'll realize the merely labeled Stephanie once you realize the absence of the fantasy Stephanie. Okay? That's the thing.
Yes, thanks. Right, thank you so much.
Even a simple example, okay? Because they say that, you see, that dependent arising is what does exist, and emptiness is what doesn't exist. They come together in the end as virtually the same, in the end. Because dependent arising of what does exist is the logic to prove what doesn't exist. And when you realize these two, it's as if you've got the same thing, roughly speaking. So, speaking a simple example, ordinary example, the example I use, let's say you think this black is red, let's say, okay? Do you understand? You see this black and you think it's red because you're colorblind. So you always, every time black is presented to you, red appears to your eye, doesn't it? You always think it's red. You agree with that? That's a possibility, let's say. Then one day we fix your eyes, we fix the problem, and I again present the black to you. So the point is now, because your eyes are fixed, but in your mind, there's this massive expectation of red, isn't there? Because that's what you're used to. Would you agree with that? You've believed in red for so long. But then suddenly, when the black appears to you, because your eyes are not any longer a problem, the black will appear to you, but you'll get the shock of your life. And what you will get the realization of is, oh my God, it's not red. That's the realization of the emptiness of red. That's the realization of the absence of red. That'll appear, and that's a completely conceptual thing. If I don't ever see this as red, I won't ever think it's not red, will I? But because you now have always thought of it as red, now your eyes are fixed, you'll get the shocking realization of the emptiness of red. Do you agree with that? Then what will you realize after that? What will you then realize after seeing it's not red?
That it has always been black?
That's right. That's a simple example of the emptiness of red is emptiness, and then you'll realize dependent arising, which is the merely labeled, which is what does exist, which is black. That's a simple example. So you'll always realize merely labeled after emptiness. That's the final realization. So as Lama Zopa says, when you've realized emptiness of Stephanie, it's as if there's no Stephanie, but there is a Stephanie. But what does exist is so subtle, it's as if she doesn't exist. And that's the merely labeled Stephanie. It's a really nice way to put the two together. Okay?
Thank you. That's a
Good,
great
darling.
example.
Thank you very much. A nice point to end. Okay, gone like a dream, our 2 hours. May some of these thoughts, we've all had thoughts, so may they're not going to go astray, so this is a very good point. They didn't go in, they might have gone in one ear and out the other, but they've all gone into your mind. Everything gets stored. So we make this aspiration to bring up these thoughts and realize the truth of them so we can get rid of suffering and be a benefit to others. How fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so we dedicate thinking that all these, I mean, what it's saying is, look at this, the words, look at this. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, that means listening to the teachings. And merit just means putting positive seeds in your mind, okay? May I quickly attain the state of being a Buddha, this is the motivation we had, so that I can lead all beings without exception into that state. So it's a very wonderful thought to have. Gewadinyu dujag lama sangye drub gyurne drowa chikyang malupa jai sala Gopashog. And then compassion, this bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is actually not compassion, it's the result of compassion. It's the outrageous aspiration. It's got two parts. One is only to be a benefit to others, to lead them all to liberation. And two, to become a Buddha so that you can do that perfectly. Jangchob semchog rinpoche ma kye panam ke gyuchig ke panyampa me payang gong ne gong du shog. And then the long life of His Holiness Dalai Lama is so special. This is Lama Zopa's new prayer, because he said it's not just the boss of Tibet, he's the boss of the whole world now. So the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in the world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And Rinpoche. So he might not be our teacher, but we make it long life, make a prayer for his long life, because, you know, and all our own teachers, may they live a long life. Think like that. Because this is Lama Zopa Center. So you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading, Manjunath, that's Manjushri's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes, I always think it should be accomplished, I think the grammar's wrong there. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who accomplish, no, it's who accomplishes, I'm sure, who serve, it's wrong. Never mind, this is grammar, forgive me. I'll go back to the beginning, so sorry. You uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers, honouring the three jewels, Saviour of myself and others, your disciples. Please, please live long. All of you live long, okay? Goodbye. Thank you for your wonderful questions. All of you, Elena, Stephanie, everybody. Thank you,
Thank you, Robina.
Bye. Thank you,
Venerable
See you,
Robina.
sweethearts. Bye.
You live long, Robina.
Oh,
Long. You live long.
I'll just.
Please live long.
I
Thank
will
you so
bully
much.
death
Thank you
to
so
go
much.
away, okay? I'll
is
bully
she
death to
saying?
go away. Goodbye.
Thank you.